It is very late. I'm a little loopy. My name's Pat. This is Ground Zero Salem, if you didn't know. If you're a first time watcher, thank you for checking it out. Like and subscribe or whatever. Or don't. Thumbs down. Talk shit. I don't care. It is very late. I have started this several times. Um, so let's just cut to the chase. This is an update where I'm going to be talking about box sets that I've been buying up for the past couple of months. I first started noticing these on Amazon and eBay, and I thought, wouldn't it be neat? I have some of these recordings, most of these recordings in some cases, on vinyl and sometimes on tape. It'd be nice to have a nice physical product that it's all in one place. Physical representation, because for some reason that's important to have. If you're a collector scum, you know what I mean with having the thing in your hands and all that. Uh, Sometimes it was stuff that I didn't have everything of, or an artist that I wanted to revisit, something convenient. And these by themselves, not in a gigantic stack, mind you, but alone, one of these box sets is pretty cheap. They're usually between 20 and 30 bucks. They often are a big expanse of the artist's work. First off, we're going to get into this right away. This is all punk mostly, like a lot of 80s British punk and hardcore, as well as death rock and goth, with a few exceptions. I got two G.B.H box sets. Now, this G.B.H stuff right here, this is the Clay Years stuff. Race Against Time. One of the first punk bands I ever got into. Picked it up on cassette. The singles collection on cassette when I was a wee Bjorn, probably 13 or so. Little skate rat kid. And I loved it. It's fast, catchy, hooky, snarling punk rock. Big influence on Rancid. At least it sounds like that. Great bass playing. Not all of it is fast and furious. There's a few numbers that are almost kind of like tuneful, post-punkish, like Children of Dust and numbers like that. But one of the bands that really led the charge, no pun intended, from the original 77 bands into something a little bit faster and more aggressive. Very important band. Toured with US bands. Were good buddies with Agnostic Front and the Cro-Mags. And they're still going with most of their original lineup. I think their drummer changed hands at some point, but it's mostly been the same dudes since whenever, 1980. Great fucking gnarly shit. If you're a metalhead and you don't know GBH, it's surprising because you'd see guys in Exodus and Metallica wearing their shirts and whatnot. But if you like Motorhead, GBH and Motorhead sound is very, very parallel and very similar in a lot of ways. The GBH stuff that I wasn't very familiar with, except for No Need to Panic, is all this Rough Justice stuff. The Rough Justice stuff was, I think, Exploited were a Rough Justice band, and there were a few other UK bands, like metal punk bands. I think maybe English Dogs might have been Rough Justice at some point. But like Combat Core, it was a subsidiary on Combat Relativity, I think, of like the hardcore wing, and it involved like a lot of the crossover kind of stuff going on in England at the time. They did 5 records on this, and like I heard No Need to Panic when I was a kid, and it musically it's really good. It's really tight. It's like a slightly more metallic GBH, but the recording I don't mind now, but as a kid I thought it was terrible. It sounded kind of buried and like really weirdly watery and reverby to me. But the other albums on this are very good. Fridge Too Far, Midnight Madness and Beyond, From Here to Reality, Church of the Truly Warped. It's GBH doing their GBH kind of thing. Colin's vocals being a little bit, at least in a punk sense, very kind of like soulful and raspy. Having a lot of like great solos. They get kind of thrashy and shreddy, but also maintain that like that GBH hookiness that's just really toe tapping and sort of like simplistic at its core, but the riffs are just a little bit more involved. It's great stuff. Super recommended. Like I was really, really pleased. I think it was Marty was talking up Midnight Madness and Beyond to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I just remember being kind of meh about that stuff, but it's very, very good. This is on Captain Oi. A lot of these box sets are on Captain Oi. They put out a lot of this stuff. This is actually on Sanctuary. There's another GBH box set that I think actually has the individual albums divided up. City Baby's Revenge, Baby Attacked by Rats, Leather Studs, Bristles, and Acne, and then the singles collection or something like that. So you take your pick. I don't know which label the other one came out on, but it's the same stuff. All right. Then we have, also on Captain Oid, the Foreskins discography. Again, comprehensive, everything they did. Foreskins are like a definitive Oi band. You know, flagship, starter pack, whatever you want to call it. Baby's first Oi. Best vocalist, they had like two or three vocalists. The best one being Hodges. Hodges having this rough kind of almost sort of growl sandpaper thing. You can tell is a massive influence on American hardcore vocalists like John Brannon from Negative Approach, Choke from Negative Effects, and Slapshot, Last Rites. Onward into bands like 86 Mentality. The Foreskins, had their kind of mid-paced, fist-pumping numbers like that song Chaos. Mid-paced numbers that kind of weren't too dissimilar to bands like Business and Blitz and their contemporaries, but they also had songs like One Law for Them and Evil that you could see how they had an influence on American hardcore. It was a bit faster. They had also had like a pretty strong Motorhead influence. Foreskins are great. Even if like Oi necessarily isn't your thing, definitely give like a Foreskins greatest hits kind of thing your ear if you like punk. Much better. I have this habit of I really like almonds, and you get the almond skins in your throat, and you start like getting cut off in mid sentence. I do anyway. It's a problem. Then you got the No Future singles. No Future, super important British punk label from the early '80s. Lots and lots of stuff came out on this label. A lot of important bands like Blitz being the flagship. You know, really huge band that had albums and songs in the charts, as well as the Partisans, who were great. Red Alert, Peter and the Test Tube Babies, the Violators, the Blood, and a lot of stuff that I'm not really that familiar with until I picked this up, like the Screaming Dead, who were more of like a goth band, a death rock band. Super primal though, not too far away from like Rudimentary Peni or something like that. They're great. Who else on here was I new to? Attack and Crux, who are bands that I heard a lot about from friends of mine that are more into this kind of stuff than me. Just very raw, like basic, but super catchy and urgent punk rock. And this is all the singles that this label did. So you get a lot of stuff. I mean, there's at least an album's worth of stuff by the Screaming Dead alone on here, and all that raw early Blitz stuff too that you want to have in your collection if you're a punker. Speaking of the Partisans, there's the Partisans box set, including Rarities, their self-titled record, which is fucking mandatory if you like pogo punk, if you like that great driving beat that makes you want to jump up and down. They pretty much pioneered that. Stompy, fun, catchy shit. 17 Years of Hell. Stop what you're doing. Put this on pause. Pick up where you left off. Pull that up on YouTube. Listen to that song. It is one of the best punk songs ever written. And their Rarities, and their early stuff actually sounds almost closer to something like the Buzzcocks, like a super tuneful 77 punk, which I hadn't heard that stuff, so this is cool to check out. Everything by the Partisans. This was also on Captain Oi. So is the No Future box set. So carrying on. The Exploited. So I'm a weird dude in the sense that I like the Exploited stuff where some may say lost the plot if you're a purist for this early stuff. I like the stuff when they went metal more. My favorite record by them is probably still The Massacre, which is a borderline speed metal record or thrash metal record. Definitely crossover. I also really like Horror Epics, which has some numbers that are stock Exploited, kind of pogo 82 style UK punk stuff, but some songs that almost resemble Killing Joke. And the entire record, Horror Epics, is produced in a very Killing Joke loud bass, like loud echoey reverbed out drum manner, and I love that record. I do like this early stuff. This is the first time I've gotten around to buying any of it, which is pretty wild to consider, considering that I've liked them for a long time. But Punk's Not Dead, super raw, basically almost like an Oi record, not too dissimilar to some of the faster Foreskin stuff. Troops of Tomorrow, that's getting tightened up a bit. Same thing with Let's Start a War. You can hear a little metal creeping in with those records. And then the singles, and the singles are awesome. The singles are like all the songs are hits. There's not really a stinker on the singles at all. There's no boredom. So especially the anti being in the army. Waddy was in the army at a certain point. That song, Alternative, one of my favorite exploited songs outside of the favorite records I have from the metal era. Even the live songs on here, Cop Cars and SPG is great. Special Patrol Group, which I want to know what the story is. I'm going to Google and Wikipedia what the Special Patrol Group was, because apparently a lot of punks in Britain did not like it, and Vivian from the Young Ones named his hamster after it. But I imagine there's some kind of cops that people didn't like at the time. Yeah, Exploited Barmy Army. They managed to mix like really catchy pub shouting, almost kind of oi stuff with like really throttled basic, stripped down like kind of aggression, like 3 chord punk stuff. Very good. And yeah, Let's Start a War is when it starts to go a little bit almost kind of speed metal, and it's slightly, and it's great. Then more UK metal punk kind of stuff here. Broken Bones. Pretty mandatory if you are into any kind of UK punk stuff. Most people are familiar that are big fans of that. If you're into metal and there isn't a lot of like punk leaning stuff you've checked out, if you happen to like thrash and speed stuff, I would definitely recommend this. Chief songwriter from Discharge Bones, thus the clever name, left Discharge when they started getting real crappy. Started this band up, and it's like one hair away from being thrash. It's just a little too snotty and maybe a little too basic to be considered thrash metal. Again, has a strong like Motorhead and Venom sort of vibe, like a lot of the bands like this in the UK at the time. These guys pretty much, along with the English Dogs, were one of the first to drag all the spiky-haired punks over into like, hey, here's some more musicianship, here's some solos, here's, you know, tighter guitar and drums and stuff like that, but still having all the kind of pogo elements and the snottiness and all that. Fucking great band. I would say probably FOAD on here is their heaviest. It compiles a lot of stuff. Dem Bones, Decapitated, FOAD, Bone Crusher, and then a live one. My favorite by this band is still Traitor in Death, which I think came right after this. It was like a 7-song EP. I love that. It's probably their heaviest. You know, it's almost breaches kind of like Crumbsuckers level of like not even being like metallic punk or metal influence punk or punk influence metal, but more like blistering crossover. That's my favorite record, but Bone Crusher and FOAD get pretty close there. Then, this is not a box set. There's a couple of these that aren't technically box sets, but I threw them in. The Damned. This is a great little compilation of The Damned. It's a 2 CD deal. Folds out like that. Got little kind of collages in there. This nice fold out history of the band kind of story. Oh, I actually didn't look at this yet. This is on another one of their on the Light at the End of the Tunnel compilation. This is the family tree of everybody that's like jammed with them or played in different versions, including Lemmy, who played a couple shows with them, and Robert Fripp from King Crimson, which is real cool. All the little iterations and side bands and stuff like that. I love The Damned. Probably one of my favorite UK punk bands from the original wave. Just, you can hear that great like swagger and croon that Dave Vanian has in his vocal approach, and I love that. You can hear what a big influence he had on American bands like the Misfits, Glenn Danzig, who wrote a song for him, and Sam Hain that he never used, Archangel, TSOL. Just such a cool, influential band. So much fucking cooler than the Sex Pistols and a lot of other bands that were around at the time. just didn't give a fuck and could play really, really, really well. There's footage in UK 82, that punk documentary of Captain Sensible, for some reason naked in like a weird plastic bubble, playing along to Jimi Hendrix doing, I think, like the national anthem or something like that, and playing it perfectly, like all the whammy inflections and everything right along with it. Funny stuff. They were influenced by a lot of wild stuff from the 60s, like they do a Love cover. And their music ranges from like that really raucous, like stripped down 3 chord late 70s UK punk stuff to like new wavy stuff that almost kind of sounds like the Elvis Costello Smash It Up, to stuff that's way like goth but almost a parody of it, even though Dave Vanian helped invent that subculture. All the stuff on Phantasmagoria, like Grimly Fiendish. I could go on and on. I love The Damned, and this is an excellent track listing, curated by the band directly. It's got Disco Man on it, White Rabbit. They covered White Rabbit, did it well. Grimly Fiendish, Shadow of Love, Love Song, Fun Factory. There's a bunch of songs from the Grave Disorder record, which I'd never really checked out. Just a handful. Like there's stuff from, I think that came out in the late 90s or early 2000s, and those songs are really strong too. Like they never really lost it. And there's a pretty good documentary that came out a couple of years ago about them, and it's worth a watch for sure. Then we've got a band that I've meant to explore more, and this is a lot. This is a lot to take in. This is the Tangerine Dream box set. This is definitely not on Captain Oi. Esoteric recordings, and this is all their earliest stuff as far as I know, from between 1970 and 1973. Electronic Meditation, Alpha Centauri, Ziet, and Etem. So, I'm out of my depth trying to talk about this stuff. There's those almond skins again. Kind of out of my depth trying to talk about this stuff. I mean, German band, contributed to a bunch of soundtracks. I guess they could be considered ambient. I guess they could be considered krautrock too. I don't know. Played a lot around with like electronic elements and psychedelia. A lot of their stuff just kind of becomes wallpaper. It's not necessarily songs as such, as far as I can interpret, at least this early material. It's a lot to kind of sink my teeth into. But it's nice to have on in the background. It's definitely have on in the background kind of music. I feel like they're almost secondary to Dead Can Dance, in like one of those non-metal bands that metalheads like to say like, oh yeah, I'm open-minded. I like Tangerine Dream. But the inserts with this are really nice. They're pretty, what appears to be faithful reproductions of the actual album art, their gatefolds and stuff like that. I need to spend a lot more time sitting with these. I like putting them on at work. I have one of those jobs where to maintain your license and what you do, you have to continue taking tests and studying stuff and, paying fees and continuing learning. So this is my chill beats to study and relax to kind of music while I have downtime. And next up, this is going to be heavily edited because I'm kind of figuring out what I'm saying and trying not to be too overly verbose. Although, last update, 50 minutes, people seem to really like to watch it. While sitting down and being like, okay, what am I going to say about the next one? I've probably like been messing with my hair, so my hair keeps morphing magically. Anyways, 3 a.m. in the morning. Now 3:30 in the morning. Awesome stuff. Oi, the albums. So this was a series of albums, spearheaded by sounds journalist Gary Bushell, starting in the early 80s, going well into the late 80s. There were also a bunch of other Oi compilations that weren't directly related to these. Looks like they originally came out on Cherry Red Records, which was a pretty big punk label at the time. Starting with Oi the album, going through, it was a document of like this new scene of a lot of working class kids, a lot of skins, a lot of punks, doing more of a proletarian from the street kind of version of punk rock, as opposed to like the art kids wearing garbage bags that were doing it a lot in the late 70s, where it was more of a more of a publicity stunt almost for Malcolm McLaren. It was almost like this was the real stuff, running parallel to the hardcore that was starting in America at the time. Um, yeah, like all the heavy hitters are on the early ones. You got Cockney Rejects, Peter and the Test Tube Babies, Foreskins. We already talked about the Exploited, the Strike, In for Riot, Last Resort, on and on and on. Musically, this stuff is about as basic as it gets. 3 and 4 chord kind of stuff, catchy choruses. A lot of that's taken from the 70s pub rock and glam and football chants of England at the time. As it goes on, there's more and more like in the studio kind of stuff thrown on these, like kind of bands that are thrown together haphazardly. There's like some interesting like Cockney poetry on these. There's some joke tracks and stuff like that, and it gets kind of weird towards the end where there's a lot of stuff I'm not familiar with. There's a band called the Orgasm Gorillas and the Britanarchists and like a bunch of stuff I'm not sure what it is. Dog's Body. Yeah, bunch of tracks by the Orgasm Gorillas. But whatever. There's a lot of mandatory street rock, as it's often called, Oi stuff on here. Kind of a controversial one was the second one called Strength Through Oi, which is a World War II reference. I'll let you look that up yourself. Joy Division was a band that was going on shortly before that, so Blitz, like there's a band called Blitz, and being from Britain, calling your band Blitz, it was, it's kind of an edgy time. But featuring this guy on the cover as well. His name is Nicky Crane. He was kind of a controversial figure. Also, I encourage you to check him out on Wikipedia. It's an interesting story. Gary Bushell swears that he didn't know that Strength Through Oi was like a shady reference, and that he also didn't know who Nicky Crane was, that he was on like a postcard or a greeting card, which is entirely possible. There was a lot of like postcards and greeting cards, and there still probably are. The last time I was in the UK, which was 15 years ago, you would still go in touristy areas and see postcards that had like spiky-headed punk rockers and goths and stuff like flipping off the camera that said like "Welcome to London" and that kind of thing. So very easily this nefarious skin dude Nicky Crane could have been on a postcard. But the whole story's interesting, but if I start talking about it, I'll have diarrhea of the mouth and probably say a bunch of dumb shit. So Nicky Crane, look it up. Next, Blitz, the albums. Blitz, one of the best, one of the most important, one of the most influential Oi bands of that whole movement. The singles in the first album are perfect. Like, I know lots and lots of people who aren't into other bands that sound like Blitz but love Blitz. Another band that was really influential on Rancid, and a lot of bands that come after it. Like anything that was super anthemic that happened in punk, like towards the end of the 80s, those bands probably had one or two Blitz records or singles kicking around. Just there's something about those bands, G.B.H. and Blitz. They had a way of, and it's probably because they all grew up listening to Motorhead, they had a way of like having sort of like gravelly, husky voices, but also being really melodic at the same time. And they did a bunch of stuff. Not all of it is perfect. Voice of a Generation is the one. This is the one where you get the song stuck in your head all day long. And one of the ones that has ois in it, do you feel alright? Oi, oi, oi. Boys are out tonight. Oi, oi, oi. Also songs like New Age, which were bordering on almost kind of like post-punk, that kind of sounded like Gang of Four or Killing Joke. Like it was not exactly like that, but along those lines. It had kind of more of a just kind of a driving beat and like guitars that sounded kind of distant and pretty, kind of thrown smack dab in the middle of all these kind of more like raucous kind of tunes. This box set also includes a live one, which I have not listened to yet, and their singles, which are great, also included on that No Future box set, and their other two albums, which are weird. Second Empire Justice sounds like a weird, not as good Joy Division, and New Order, and maybe a little bit of the Smiths, a little bit. Definitely a lot like Joy Division, which is odd. Matt and Marty and a few other people did a series where they were talking about like defending, the divisive albums, the shitty albums by bands, whatever. My little mini entry to that is probably going to be Second Empire Justice because it's a great post-punk record. It's got a lot of electronic elements. It's morose sounding. I guess it's like only half of the OG lineup that did all the more punk leaning stuff. And it gets boring at certain points. It's definitely no Joy Division or New Order or whatever. But if you like that stuff, it's not half bad. Then you get the Killing Dream, which they didn't do until this came out in 1990, also with some different members. The singer was from this band called Attack that almost sounded like a Dollar General version of Blitz, not in a bad way. Attack's pretty good, and it's fitting that they would get the guy to be in this lineup. This almost has like a lot of that new wavy kind of stuff still influencing it, but they're almost kind of trying to double back and do their old style again. So it's this kind of mishmash. It's not terrible, but I actually like the straight up new wave record better. So yeah, that Oi record, the Oi compilation, and this also Captain Oi, which is reasonable to assume, but throw that out there. Then we'll get into some goth stuff. The Neff. Fields of the Neff. Love this band. Had their first two LPs since forever, Dawn Razor and the Nephilim. Hadn't really been spinning them that much. They've just come up in conversation a lot with people I'm tight with the past couple years. And I've been kind of diving back in, and I love it. They've been called spaghetti western goth, which is very apropos. There's stuff that almost sounds like slide steel guitar. All these kind of Ennio Morricone sort of little touches here and there on their early material, and it's so good. Carl McCoy's vocals as he goes on in his career get more gravelly and more weird. He definitely gives Andrew Eldritch like a run for his money as far as that vocal style goes. And this is a great compilation. Dawn Razor, Nephilim, Elysium, Earth Inferno, which is the live record, and singles and mixes all thrown on there. My favorite's probably the Nephilim. I know a lot of people go for Dawn Razor. The Nephilim is just stuck with me more. I feel like things are a little bit more concise compositionally on that record. And Elysium is dark as fuck. Really good, but that's a lot to take in. But these Beggars Banquet box sets are nice. Just slip covers. There's the singles and mixes. That is still the best cover that they have. That's the coolest. There's the glowing eyes and shit. Love it. Dawn Razor. Great name, too. Dawn Razor. These are the singles. I don't even know. Okay. I was like, I don't know which end to hold this up. And then a booklet. There's not too much in this. Really, it's just track names and stuff. Then we got Bauhaus. Not that long ago, a few updates back, I mentioned I have those two Bauhaus collections. It's like the black one and the white one with the face from Mask, I think. No, Mask is a different, whatever. The Bauhaus face. And I was like, these are the only songs I really need. And a few people in the comments were like, dude, you at least need In the Flat Field. And I was just like, you know what, these are cheap. This has all the albums as well as the singles. Why don't I dive in? So we've got Mask. That is not what I was thinking of. Sky's Gone Out, which is the one album that I always have had, which has some really weird moments, like some very creepy moments with just a guy talking that are just ugh. That's what I was talking about. That Bauhaus face, the iconic Bauhaus face, which if you watch, I can't remember which New Kids on the Block video, but one of them, Jordan, is wearing that shirt. I don't know who bought that for him, but probably the same guy who bought Donnie the Suicidal Tendencies shirt. Anyways, shouldn't be revealing my knowledge of the New Kids. It's probably not a good look. Uh, Burning from the inside. So, I mean, all this stuff is cool. I think it's just with me, those two CDs worth of like best of songs really imprinted on me. And I definitely do think that Bauhaus has stronger songs than others because their impactful songs are so like fucking moving. In the Flat Field, the song In the Flat Field, Spy in the Cab, Passion of Lovers, their cover of Third Uncle, which is I think I like the opening a record with a cover move. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's bold. I think it was cool that Celtic Frost did it. I realize I'm a minority in that, but whatever. She's in Parties. All those songs are so awesome and heavy in their own right. You know, not heavy in terms of like Sabbath heaviness, but just emotionally impactful. And I don't know, like maybe it's just that I'm older and jaded, and like now when I listen to songs that I'm not familiar with, like Who Killed Mr. Moonlight or Small Talk Stinks, or these songs that I don't really know that are deeper cuts from the records, I'm like, yeah, but is it She's in Parties though? Because like who's in the can? He's in the can? She's in the can? Anyways, it is nice to actually have all this stuff at my fingertips though, which is the point of buying these. Hopping back to Oi from Goth, Coxbar, a band predating punk, which I don't know if that's talked about extensively, but it's true. There's an early record on here, self-titled, that is from the mid 70s, so before the Sex Pistols were even a thing. This one, The Decca Years, where it sounds to me like a bunch of different recordings, but I could be wrong. Tracks 1, 2, 6, and 7, 1977. Okay, so very early in the punk thing, but the songs on here, half of them sound like glam. Half of them sound like Sweet or Slade, like the most energetic versions of Sweet and Slade. They did tour with the Small Faces too, so they were part of that before the punk thing really started happening. And you know, unlike a lot of Oi bands that kind of had that hoarse shouting, what's his name, Colin, the singer, really could belt it out. Kind of a higher range voice, actually can sing, can project. This record's a real gem because it sounds, you could hear their sound kind of forming, but it's still very like Platform Boots, you know, glam inspired kind of stuff. Early versions of a couple of songs that came on later: Teenage Heart, Sunday Stripper, Runnin' Riot, Chip on My Shoulder. Also included on this is all the early stuff. There's a live record, Live and Loud. These are notoriously like not the best sound quality, but they're a fun listen as well. Running Riot in '84. This album is almost like, to my ear, a little like new wave of British heavy metal tinged, especially Run with the Blind. It has a little bit, almost kind of like, I mean, it's definitely not like they're trying to sound like Raven or something like that, but it's got a little gallop to some of the songs. There's a little bit of like a hard rock metal kind of sensibility to it. It's a cool record. I hated it because back in the day, the one that you would get, I think it was an Anagram release, was these two on the same CD, Shock Troops, and Shock Troops was just like all the bangers. Great sounding recording, anthem after anthem, not a stinker on the thing, unless you know you don't like Out on an Island because it's a ballad, but get in touch with your feelings and get into that song. If you have that problem, just learn to love yourself. But it's got England Belongs to Me, Argy Bargy, Colonel, but it's great. It's just super tuneful, working class punk rock. But then after it, Running Riot came on, and it was like felt weird. But now I fucking love that record. These are all little mini slipcases, obviously, that kind of reproduce the album art, and it's got a nice booklet as well. Some history of the band. I feel like pouring over and reading some stuff. And as far as I know, I think these guys are still at it. You know, they're up there. I remember talking about how they were up there in like 2001. So I've had to stop and start this several times. I'm finally at the end of this. I am so tired. Unfortunately, I have this nice panoramic thing with I'm recording with my phone, but through the OBS program, but it keeps going out of sync. So I've had to stop it several times, and it's gonna be a fucking bitch, but whatever. Then we've got Alien Sex Fiend. Uh, Definitely a goth club staple when I was a kid, going to goth and industrial nights in Rochester, New York, and later in Boston at Man Ray. Um, Always loved Now I'm Feeling Zombified and I Walk the Line Between Good and Evil. Two great songs. But what a weird band. I mean, I know they're heavily associated with the OG goth, like, Batcave scene, and that kind of thing. You know, I remember picking up issues of Ghastly and when I was learning about that particular subculture and seeing Nick Fiend, like, you know, mentioned a lot and his pictures and everything. Musically, they have that spookiness and those kind of echoey guitars, but there's like this really minimalist electronic, like, drum machine kind of thing that sounds like it comes from Suicide. There's elements of like the with the riffs and the sort of guitar work that's almost like kind of psychobilly. As a matter of fact, I have a psychobilly compilation that has one of their songs on it. They throw a lot of stuff in together, and they definitely were into acid. You can easily tell because a lot of this stuff just goes on and on and on, kind of like a psychedelic jam. But I never mind it. I actually really enjoy it and get into it. So this is their first four proper albums. They had plenty of other releases in between all these, like singles and live tapes and all this stuff. But this is the first four proper LPs. Who's Been Sleeping in My Brain, Acid Bath, Maximum Security, and It the album. But yeah, dreamlike, occasionally like very like kind of punk and aggro. They have that weird kind of rock and roll vibe. It's like Cramps meets Suicide meets Christian Death, I guess. It's not something you can really do justice to with an A meets B meets C thing. So I'm gonna just kind of quit while I'm ahead. But I'm so happy to be back listening to Alien Sex Fiend. All I had previously was an Anagram singles collection, which is great, but you know, there's a lot of like longer mixes and like dance mixes and stuff like this. This is like all the original songs, which is nice. Then not finally, almost finally, we've got a couple of Discharge collections. This is a straight up 80 to 85, all the good stuff they did the first run, all the pre-Grave New World stuff. Discharge, super important. You should know why if you like metal or punk. If by some chance you're just watching this because you're bored and you know nothing about anything I'm talking about, that's weird. Thank you for sticking around this long. But yeah, Discharge, one of the first like really, really angry fast punk bands to push the envelope in terms of extremity in the early 80s. This is all the stuff before they kind of lost their way, including Why, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing, Never Again, The Nightmare Continues, and although it's not featured on the cover, all their singles are on here too. This is on Captain Oi, another clamshell deal. It's got all the slipcases, like I mentioned. And then you have the compilation, the best of, here, Protest and Survive. This has been discussed a little bit. I think Jason showed it off, talking about what a bad cover this is. I don't honestly think it's that bad. I do like the embossed logo, nice foil stamped logo there. You got zombie riot cops, and this person's very brave, standing up to the zombie riot cops. However, they're kind of a poser, unfortunately, because you don't stud a hoodie. You get a vest, and you put your studs in the vest, and you put it over a hoodie, like a proper SJW. Anyways, this came out on BMG. It's got all the mandatory songs from here, and they're actually really good at curating the few oddball songs from the not so great records they did after Grave New World. There's like Shooting Up the World and Massacre Divine, and those records are both not that great, but have a handful of okay songs that they threw on here. And then there's their return to form stuff that started in 2000 with their self-titled record, which is excellent, by the way. Super heavy, really, really good. I need to pick that up again. And then they did some stuff with Rat from the Verukers and went on and on. But it captures some of their post 2000 stuff along the classics. It's got their demo on here, which isn't really necessary. It's just a average 77 punk sound, very like kind of rough recording. It's cool to hear it for posterity's sake. But I picked this up first, and then I saw this, and I was like, it's just Discharge. I just want, one of the most important bands ever, so I'm just gonna buy all of it. Fuck it. And then last, you've got New Model Army, one of my favorite bands. A band I don't really see discussed that much. They definitely, I mean, they carved their own niche. They weren't directly like a goth band. They weren't exactly a punk band, even though they had a lot of those politics. They kind of had their own thing. They had a morose kind of vibe, but they were very political. They had a lot of like folky acoustic guitar kind of stuff, post-punk kind of influences going in. A very, very strong bassist. A lot of it's very bass driven with like weird kind of all over the neck kind of bass lines, but they all are catchy and make sense. It's hard to explain. You should definitely listen to them. If you like The Hunt, which Sepultura covered on KSAD, that's one of their songs. Also, I Love the World, which I want to say Anacrusis. It was Anacrusis or Fear Factory. I don't remember which. I Love the World, but like very like a lot of bravado and emotion and great clever lyrics as well from New Model Army. So yeah, if you're a fan of like post-punk goth stuff, or even some more like upbeat, tuneful anarcho-punk, I would say New Model Army should be something you should be looking into if you haven't already. And this is one of those not that great box sets, by the way, in terms of packaging. This is a Warner Brothers one. I have a few like this of like some metal bands. I think I have a Manowar one and a Testament one, and it's just just this slipcase cover with all the albums. Ghost of Cain, probably my favorite right there. But all these are really good. This is the live record, Raw Melody Man. And I'm not too familiar with Impurity yet, but I will be, because now I have all of them in the same little place. It's so nice. That's why I like having these. And that is my update. I'm going to go to bed. It's 4 in the friggin' morning. I'm going to bed. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed. You like that skeleton bat thing back there? That's cool. All right. Good night.